Hi, I'm your host, Rick Sessinghaus, and excited to launch Flow Golf Podcast. Each episode, we will share stories, interview experts, and share cutting-edge strategies for peak performance. Here's my co-host, Hallam Morgan, to explain more about FlowCode Golf.
Thanks, Rick. FlowCode Golf is a framework of strategies, principles, and techniques that take us from fear to the state of flow, the state of optimal performance, and the zone where we play our best golf. You can find out more about FlowCode Golf at www.flowcode.golf. And I just want to finish up by saying this podcast is as much your podcast as it is ours. So please ask questions, provide feedback, and get engaged. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Welcome back. Another episode of the Flow Golf Podcast. Rick, I'm incredibly excited about this one that I think is going to be quite new for a lot of the listeners and is hopefully going to open a lot of minds to the possibilities of mental game training. So I want to talk today about how we're utilizing technology at FlowCode in order to help our players understand their state, mentally, emotionally, and physically. I know you've used technology for a long time, Rick, but I know it's evolving at just a crazy rate right now. And there's so many opportunities for us to develop and learn and grow in the technology space. So can you share a little bit about your journey with technology, especially in the mental side of the game?
Sure, and let me just zoom back real quick. Is that those that are in playing golf, and those are the coaches out there. Technology certainly is right in front of our face all the time now, right? What used to be, videoing a golf lesson, and then it became part where you could draw lines on certain software, and then it became something on your phone, and now we have radar systems, we have 3D on your phone. So swing lessons, have definitely accelerated where we're using technology. And the big argument among swing instructors is you need to measure everything, that way you can improve it. And I'm not disagreeing with that. And yet then I've had some people come back in the swing or the performance area and say, well, the mental game, you can't quantify it. You can't measure it. So thus, it really is not as important. Now, of course, that gets my blood boiling because it's a very ignorant statement, but that's for another podcast. The issue, though, is the mental game is important. Everybody says it is. And yet, when we get back to the trainability, not many people are doing it. Two main reasons. One is they don't know what the mental game is. You and I have always talked about it's about being in an optimal state, your performance state. What am I focusing on cognitively, mental, emotional, and physical state I'm in, okay? And we can train focus and confidence and emotional regulation, okay? That's for a whole other podcast. But how do we now measure it is part of the equation, because if I can measure it, then I can see if it's getting better or not. And that has been lacking in the mental game. I will agree with that. So back years and years ago, when I played competitive golf, I would say there was very little technology as it related to the mental game. It may be as simple as a heart rate monitor that you put on. And it's like, oh, your heart rate went up. That must be bad. It's like, well, now we know that that's not necessarily true, okay? But remember what we were working with was, oh, it must be a heart rate thing, okay? And then we started getting into a little bit of breathing rates. And then what was happening behind the scenes is in university settings where somebody had a closed environment, they could put EEG devices on that had, 12, 18, sometimes 30 different EEGs on somebody's head. We can now measure brainwave activity and such. Now that sounds great, but nobody's swinging on a golf club. It's in a closed environment, but it was the start of how do we know that visualization works? How do we know that breath work helps regulation, right? So we're starting to get there. What's been exciting, I think, now, and of course, what in the future is we're finding that these technologies, of course, are easier and easier to develop in, how should I say, in a space where we can actually utilize it on the golf course. So you're going to talk a little bit more about a device that we utilize called FocusCalm, but even, gosh dang it, 12 years ago, I was using a device that had a helmet on it, that had some EEGs on it. We could putt with it, but we couldn't really swing because it was wired to a computer. And then that same device it had a better version where it was a Velcro piece across your head. It was more Bluetooth, so you could move with it a little bit. And now we're starting to measure brainwave activity. We're starting to measure even something called quiet eye, is how much are the eyes moving in space. So we know from the research done in Canada that the best putters in the world have they have quiet eye, which means their eyes do not move more than 3 degrees during performance. And so if my eyes are quiet, my mind is calmer, my body's going to perform better. So the point of it is that a lot of this has been doing at studies have been done at research and in college settings, but now we're trying to bring it to the real world with devices that can be done on the range and on the golf course. So that's what I'm excited about, is now I've utilized different EEGs. I've used heart rate monitors, but in a different way. I'm looking at heart rate variability, which is more of the measurement of the beat. It's not beat per minute, but it's the space in between each beat. We can see how the stress level is and resilience and stuff like that. So we can actually measure how stressed somebody is. So those are some of the cool things that what we have and where we're coming up to in this present moment.
And Rick, just before we dive into the specific technologies, how have you, I guess, struggled, probably is what most people do, but in communicating what that technology actually gives us? The data's great, but then how do we communicate that to the player? Like, how have you found that experience over the years?
Yeah, I think it's just like with the golf swing data, is we get excited with data, so we tend to share way too much with our student. What I've learned to do is less is best. And what we'll talk about with FocusCalm is we have a very simple number that will go up or down, right? I am now not showing them the actual brainwave activity and look how it spikes, and then, oh, look at this, and then you were able to, because then they're like, oh, am I supposed to be impressed with that? And then they're not know what to do with it. But you and I, as the coaches, can take information in. We do not have to share all the data. So I was one who loved to share a lot of data, and my students would look at me with a deer in the headlights, like, okay, what's this supposed to mean to me? So I've learned to communicate it better, simplify it, and then the experience of using the technology has been fun for me, is to show them in real time that they have control over their state. That's been my biggest takeaway of using technology, is it encourages them to go, oh, you mean I did that?
Yep.
That number went up in a good way. And that breath work, oh my God. And that visual, oh. So they now, it empowers them that they have control over their state. To me, that's the game changer. Okay. Even if it goes up a little bit, right? So that's the thing, is that I think we get overwhelmed with technology because it's cool and exciting, but how much do we share with somebody? The coach has to be able to filter it. And having one thing to really communicate with the student is vital.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my concerns is communication of the data, the information. And then another one of my concerns, in all honesty, is intuition and the impact on intuition. Now, I'm not a swing coach, but would love for you to share your thoughts on this. And how do we ensure that, yes, technology is super important and it's going to elevate the experience, it's going to elevate the coaching, it's going to elevate everything. But how do we ensure that technology doesn't replace intuition, that technology actually becomes a tool to build a better relationship with intuition? Because that's what I would want to use technology for.
Yeah. I love this question because I'm very much in favor of intuition, gut feeling. Everybody talks, I'm a feel player, right? And how do you quantify a feel player, right? And so I think if we set people too much into, you have to do it a certain way, which I think data sometimes does, is like, let's say the mental game. You have to have this pre-shot routine. You have to do this breathing rate. You have to do this. I have to do 2 practice swings. I think we're losing the sense of what it's about.
Yep.
However, if we flip it and have them experience different, we call them triggers, flow triggers. We have them experience something differently, and then the technology says, oh, it got better. But really, I don't even look at the number until I get the experience from the player. How did that feel? What was your experience? They, oh my gosh, I felt so focused. I go, what you led to that? Oh, I did that shot tracer thing you talked about with making the shot tracer red, and then I made it go into a bullseye. And I go, oh, really? What did that make you feel like? Oh, I felt focused. I didn't think about anything else but I go, great. Then I go, oh, look at your number. It got all the way up to 90 on this. Oh my gosh, wow, right? So I don't give them the number first.
Yep.
But I want them to believe that what they're doing and they get to try different things is so important. And their gut feeling, what there is going to be probably better than what I'm going to give them, if that makes sense. I have to be careful of not just saying one size fits all, because I think that can get in the way of somebody being at their best.
Yep. No, I think that's so important. And having them share that experience first is always, always, always what we do when we use the technology. And then the other component, and I'll dive into the technology that we use specifically in a second, but the other thing that I do is actually have them, when they think they are in what we call the FocusCalm zone, when they think they're there, then call out or take a certain action or do something. And I guess it's the same to some extent as you picking a certain yardage, and I'm going very basics on swing
Right.
technology, but you picking a yardage on, say, a TrackMan and saying, right, hit this number. And yes, they might feel, okay, what does that feel like? Try and hit the number. Then they're looking at the TrackMan to see, okay, was I able to? So you're starting to build that better relationship with that intuition of what does it feel like to be in a flow state? There's some kind of internal, normally indescribable feeling that you have. Like for me, and I share this always, like my fingertips tingle a little bit. I can feel it. Some people, it's like they feel something in their head. Some people, they feel it in their belly. Some people in their feet. Like I've had so many different explanations of what it feels like to someone when they're in that zone. And that's what I want people to start to figure out. Not so they have to keep looking at the device like, am I there? Am I there? Am I there? But actually
Yes.
like knowing they're there because they've got this sensation that they've now associated to that zone. Because when they go out on the golf course, they haven't got the device. Like you best
100%.
know when you're in that state. And that's most important from my perspective.
100%, because ultimately any skill, we want to be able to transfer it not only on the golf course, but in as many different situations and environments as possible. And that's part of what the learning phase is you do it in a closed environment first, which is maybe at home and you're doing your breath work, and then we do it on the range, then we do it in a practice round, and then we're escalating to the point, what would you be feeling on the 18th hole in your member guest when, if you win this, or excuse me, if you make this putt, you win this tournament? We're escalating potential pressure, but we're giving people the tools to be able to train it. And the only way they can do that is back to, what did I feel? What did I do? Not necessarily what did the technology say. Okay, we can use that, awesome, which we do it as a way to help verify that yes, what you were feeling actually showed up, that there was less brainwave activity. You were in a calmer state. Awesome. Then they can anchor that. It's something we talk about a lot, is the association or anchor. So now they know it can be transferred whenever they want.
Yeah, for sure. Really powerful, really powerful. So the device that we use right now is called the FocusCalm device. So it has 3 electrodes at the front. And for those of you that are listening, it's like a headband. So you put it on your head, over your forehead, over the tops of your ears, and it has 3 electrodes at the front that measure your brainwave activity. And essentially what this organization have done is they've created an AI model of what they believe is the optimal brainwave activity for performance. Now, it's a combination of many types of brainwaves, but predominantly it's a combination of alpha and theta brainwaves. When your brain is producing those brainwaves, we're normally in a more calm and focused mindset. So essentially what the device is doing is measuring your brainwave activity in that moment and then comparing your brainwave activity to that model. And then it's giving you a 0 to 100% match. So if your score is 0, you are as far away from that model as you could possibly get. And most likely your brain is very active. You have a lot of thoughts that you're processing, and that's what we call an active state. It's not a negative state, but it's just an active state. It means there's a lot of processing going on. And that's actually useful for certain times in a round of golf, and we'll discuss that in a second. If you're on the other end of the spectrum, you're at 100, that means you're perfectly aligned with the model that they've created. and you're focused and you're calm, you're in the state that we want you to be in when you're performing. Now, this isn't necessarily a meditative state. This device is actually measuring more of an active, focused, calm state. So one that actually is in performance, right? You're doing something, you're doing an activity. You're not just sat down and switching everything off. You're actually doing something, you're moving, you're taking action, which is really, really key for any kind of sport, obviously. So we use this device for many, many different purposes. We've mentioned a couple of them already, but one of the most powerful ones for me is when we count someone down. So we say, right, 3, 2, 1, go. And we essentially ask them to shift their state from one of active into focus calm. And of course, we've given them some ideas of different techniques they could use to do that, but we start to train them and we start to challenge them to do that on demand. Because my belief is that one of the most powerful skills you can develop is your ability to shift your state on demand. Because the reality is you're going to go out there in tournaments, you're going to go out there in high pressure situations, and you're going to feel stress. You're going to feel a bit anxious. Your heart rate's going to increase. Your grip pressure is going to get a bit tight. It's going to happen if you're pushing yourself to your limits. But if you know that these specific techniques shift your state on demand because you've seen it happen so many times on this device and you've got that feedback, what you've then got is your code for flow, your flow code, right? And when you've got that, you don't fear being a little bit anxious. You don't fear your heart rate increasing a little bit. You don't fear your grip pressure getting a bit tight because you know you can do something about it. So that's what we use the device for very, very often. And we have the student do it 10 times, 15 times, 20 times, not just once, but have they seen that go from active to focus calm all those times? Because now they believe it. It empowers them. Like you see all of a sudden, like a light bulb goes off in their mind and they look more confident almost immediately because they now know they can navigate any situation. And often I'll just quickly share this before we jump back onto your side, but I always share this analogy of what we help people do at FlowCode. And I always say to people, right, let's take you to a second shot on a par 4, right? Let's imagine that you've got water short, you've got water long of the green, and let's say you're 150 yards from the flag. Let's say you turn to your golf bag and all you have in there is a putter. How does that make you feel? Now, most people say anxious, nervous, what am I going to do? Confused. All of these things start to spiral. And that puts you into that spiral. And I say, okay, now let's think about the exact same scenario. You've got 150 to the flag, water short, water long. This time you turn to your golf bag and you've got that perfect 8-iron. You're like, oh, that's my 8-iron yardage. That's the one. And you pull out your 8-iron. How does that now make you feel? People are like excited, confident, can't wait to hit the shot. All of these words start to come up and it's like, wow, the only thing that changed, the circumstance didn't, the external situation didn't. The only thing that changed was the tools that you had available to overcome that challenge in front of you. So really what we're trying to help people achieve from the mental side is that when they face a mental challenge, heart rate increases or nerves come about or they get a bit anxious, when they turn to their mental golf bag, for most people it's empty. There's nothing in there. They haven't got any mental golf clubs to overcome the challenge. And it's actually that creates the spiral. But what we want to do with the use of the technology is start to fill up that mental golf bag with as many mental golf clubs as possible. And you know that they work. You know that they're going to be powerful because you've seen it happen so many times. So when you face that bit of anxiety or heart rate increase, you go, oh, no problem. That's that breathwork club. That's that visualization club. And you know they're going to work. So you're excited to use them because you've seen them work so many times with the feedback of the technology. So that I think is really summarizes why we want to use the technology to give people that belief that they know they have techniques to help them navigate those challenges. That's absolutely massive.
100%. And I love the idea of the mental clubs. I think from swing instruction, we want somebody to know a cause and effect. We want to give them drills. We want to give them concepts. We want to give them, and sometimes we have to give them many, many different ideas to try to solve the same problem. And of course, at FlowCode, we know that there is, I don't want to say endless, but there are hundreds of ways we can change state. And by having the technology there to measure it, it does help people like go, oh, okay, I've got that tool. I know it works because I've done it. It's been validated. Oh, but you know what? But I also have this other one that I can pull out when this happens, right? And when people have that flexibility and they have those options, Again, it empowers them. There's a sense of hope. There's a sense of optimism, which can help somebody get into a flow state.
Absolutely. And that kind of bleeds into the other way we use the device, which is for what we call a mindset fitting, right? We all know club fittings, and we all understand, by the way, that we're all unique, right? We all have different golf swings. We all have different personalities, predispositions, and we understand we also have different mindsets. Like there's different techniques that work for different individuals. So we use the device as well to go through all the different FlowCode techniques, whether it's breath, visual, sound, deep embodiment, tactile, even smells, whatever that is. Figure out which techniques work best for you as an individual so you can have your own code for flow. And what's blown me away when we've used the device at a lot of events all over the world is some of the crazy, just absolutely nuts ways that people change their state. Stuff that I never would have taught, in all honesty. I don't think any of us would have taught. I remember one example. This was an event we did in Pennsylvania, actually. And this one guy, we'd taken him through all the techniques, breath work, visual, sound, like everything. And we're like, oh, nothing's working. Just nothing was getting him to shift his state from active to focus calm. But what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And it was a group session as well. So the worst thing was that everyone else had finished because they'd done the exercise we asked. And he's there on his own and everyone's watching him, waiting for him to finish the exercise. So the pressure was mounting on him. You could kind of sense he was getting more self-conscious. And then all of a sudden, he went down into this crouched position. I didn't prompt it. No one said anything. But he went down into this crouched position. And the score went through the roof to more of a focus calm state, right, where we want it to go. And I was like, wow. We had a conversation. I said, right, let's go again. Like everyone else, go away, like do your own thing. Let's practice that again. Do the same thing. Same thing again. Same thing again. And he repeated it so many times. And I was like, wow, what on earth's going on? Like why is that shift in your state? Is there any reason you can think, like, why did you decide to go down into a crouch position? And he was like, well, now I think about it. He said, I do it a lot if I'm waiting on the fairway, if I've got playing partners and we're waiting for the group in front, I kind of just go into that position. But he said, now I think about it a bit deeper. When I was younger, I spent a lot of time as playing baseball. And he said, and I was a catcher. So I spent all my time in this position, crouched down. And it's a place that I feel focused. I feel calm. Like I remember that mindset, that state I was in where I was just locked in to that moment, locked into the ball and just fully focused. I wasn't in the past. I wasn't in the future. I wasn't daydreaming about other things, but I was focused and I was calm. And it takes me back to that place. And that's what blew me away with that device as well, because one, he probably would have felt too embarrassed without feedback from the device to try that. And number two, we would have never have known that that worked, because how do we know? I mean, other than his own feelings, and if he doesn't have the awareness to be like, yeah, that felt great or it felt different, it can be really difficult to uncover some of those things. So that kind of thing has been really powerful when we take people through these mindset fittings and we utilize their past experiences in order to uncover certain techniques that might work for them in the present moment. So that's another way we use it, and I think incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and I think you allude to something that people need to understand is you have everybody who's listening right now has been in a flow state.
Yep.
Okay. And whether it's golf or other things in your life, you have done it. And you need to go back to those times and what were you thinking? What were you feeling? What were you doing? And there's already a recipe there. And if we can remember those things and go, oh, maybe there's a thread that's similar with this flow state to this flow state to this, is trying that. And like you said, the technology can now help us quantify that, yeah, you're right. Your brainwaves activity actually does drop a little bit and you're actually in a calmer state. That's interesting. Because I've learned from, as you have, from our students of something that has worked for them, a mental club that we didn't even know existed, right?
Sure. Yep.
And so now we have more tools in our toolbox to be able to help people. So I think people need to understand this is something they've already experienced. It could be in a different sport. It could be in a different activity, yet some of those things can be utilized in any activity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the weirder the better. That's the funny thing. So yeah. I now tell everyone that story when I go and do events. And I had an event in China and I was telling that story to the group. And I remember then I was walking around after and they were all doing their exercises. We were playing a certain game with the device. And this guy, he was like jumping up and down. And I said to the translator, I was like, can you ask him what he's doing? Like, why is he jumping up and down? And he had the conversation and basically he said, oh, I'm a horse rider. Like I've spent my whole life horse riding. So he was there like jumping up and down like this. And it was the funniest thing. We had the conversation after. But honestly, it was shifting his state every single time on demand. Now, the funny thing is, we said, look, you might be in a good state, you might play great golf, but you might also be on your own out there on the golf course because not many people will want to play with you if you're galloping around like a horse. But it was interesting again to uncover what works for different people, because often that movement actually sends people the other way. It normally puts them into more of an active state, but for him, it was shifting every time. So get playful, be creative, go back to, like Rick said, those times, those places, those moments when you have been in flow, and use those now in the present moment because they're personal to you. And they've got so much emotion, so much energy connected to them that they can really be powerful in the present moment. Rick, my final question for you with all this madness.
Yes, sir.
Where is this going? Where's technology going, especially in the mental side of the game? What might it look like in 5 years from now? And again, it's probably too difficult to predict with the speed and the exponential growth of all these technologies, but where do you see it going?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I mean, most of us wear some form of wearables now, whether it's an iWatch or something like that, and we can now measure heart rate 24/7. We have rings, we have this, we have all these Garmin's, all these type of things that can the wearables. Obviously, that technology keeps improving, and more people are using them. Take it to the EEG idea. I think is those are only going to improve the level of accuracy and improvement. I'm very excited about virtual reality and augmented reality is I can put somebody in a virtual reality setting where there is stress to try to elevate heart rate, to try to get them in a stress state, and then utilize our flow triggers and stuff in real time. I think it's going to get even more and more, I hate to say real, but how do we create these realities that are similar to us feeling pressure on the 18th hole at a US Open or something like that? That is only going to intensify here in the next few years. The technology is going through the roof. I think the wearable technology is only going to get more accurate. Yes, we'll know your respiration rate, we'll know your heart rate variability, we'll know your brain, we'll know everything in real time. Then it's going to be really cool to be able to extract from that what may have led to that. Let's say somebody's in a fear state. What has triggered the fear state? The thoughts, the perceptions, and then of course, how do we shift them into a flow state? What led to that? I think we're going to get a lot more answers here in the next few years.
Yep. No, the AR and the VR is going to be interesting because at the moment, in order to recreate that first tee shot or that 6-foot putt to win a tournament, we either have to throw someone out of a plane, which I'm not interested in, like the whole lawsuits and the legal documents we'd have to sign. Or what I actually have done in the past is had ice baths, right? So have people prepare themselves because the way that your body starts to feel before you step into that ice bath, everything in your head is like, don't get in, this is going to be horrible, this is going to be, and your mind's spinning, that chimp's going crazy in your mind. And if you can, as you slowly lower yourself into the water, with all of that stuff in your mind, if you can slow that breathing down, slow your heart rate down, and even quieten that mind, that's a really powerful technique. When you get onto that first tee box, it'll feel like the easiest task in the world if you can do it there. But AR and VR is going to make that more connected to the game of golf, where we can put people in those situations and recreate it. So no, it's exciting stuff. We'll be keeping an eye out for all of the developments. And yeah, we look forward to bringing them to the game of golf to help people shoot lower scores and of course enjoy the game more, right? Which is key.
That's right.
Good stuff. Cheers, Rick. And I look forward to the next one.